Some are inspired to take advantage of something that comes to town. Others pass it up. We don't know the mystery to that. Here's what I call it. Mysteries of the mind. And I just leave it at that. Some things I don't try to figure out. I take the simple approach now. Right? Some people do and some people don't. I mean, that's about as profound as my philosophy is. Some buy and some don't buy. Some go for it and some don't. Some change and some don't. And if you've been around for a while, you can usually work out the numbers, right? Out of 10, 3 do, 7 don't. Whatever business you're involved in, pretty soon you got this ratio going. The ones that do, the ones that don't. You say, well, why don't the ones that don't, how come they don't? We don't know. I just leave it as a mystery. I used to try to understand all that. I just take the simple approach there. The guy says, this happens to me, this happens to me, this goes wrong for me, and all this stuff goes wrong for me. How come all this stuff happens to me? I say, I don't know, beats me. The best I've been able to figure out is those kind of things always happen to people like you. I mean, right? That's the best I got. I don't know. I'm an amateur on this stuff. What do I know? So, just take the simple approach, right? That's how it is. Who knows? Interesting story says, the day the Christian church was started. Now, I'm an amateur on the Bible. The best account I can remember, the day the Christian church was started, a magnificent sermon was preached. Great presentation. And if you're a student at all of good communication, it was one of the classic presentations of all time. The sermon, first day Christian church was started. And it said this sermon, this presentation was given to a multitude, meaning a lot of people. But it was interesting, as the account gives us the record, it says, when the sermon was finished, there was a variety of reaction to the same sermon. Isn't that fascinating? I find it fascinating. It said some that heard this presentation were perplexed. And I read the presentation, sounded pretty straightforward to me. Said, why would somebody be perplexed with a good, sincere, straightforward presentation? Best answer I've got. They are the perplexed. I mean, what other explanation is there? It doesn't matter who's preaching. It said some that heard this presentation mocked and laughed, made fun of the presentation. I thought, hey, this looks pretty sincere to me. If you give a sincere, honest presentation, why would somebody mock and laugh? Easy explanation. They are the mockers and the laughers. What else would you expect them to do? Right? I used to try to straighten all that out. Say, well, they shouldn't do that. I don't do that anymore. I've got peace of mind now. I can sleep like a baby, not try to straighten all this stuff out. I used to be so naive. I used to say, well, liars shouldn't lie. See, how naive can you be? Of course they're supposed to lie. That's why we call them liars. They lie. They lie. Well, I don't straighten this stuff out anymore. Anyway, it said some that heard this magnificent presentation didn't know what was going on. And they're usually easy to spot. They're usually saying, what's going on, right? I mean, they don't know what's going on. But interesting, right? A variety of reaction to the same sincere, honest presentation. Now, it also says, in wrapping it up, some that heard the presentation believed. And I think that's who the speaker was looking for, the believers. Interesting.
They think that success is supposed to happen like that. It was very difficult for me to figure out where my boundaries were because I'd grown up poor and didn't have anything. And now that I know better, I know I don't have to do that again. It's one of the most powerful lessons any of us can ever know. I think in order to actually do the stuff, yes, money is important. But I also think the thing that I hold the dearest and the reason why the noise about running for president moved me so humbly and deeply is because it means that you have somewhere in the work gained the people's trust.
Yes, you have.
And there is nothing more important to me than having the trust of the people and the audience. And I recognize that it is the audience who came every day and watched, from all over the world that actually, yes, that helped me to be who I am. So I think the
renown, the
standing, the ability to be trusted and to say something, but also listen, don't play the billionaire thing small. Don't play the be small.
Yeah.
It's a very big deal because it allows you to It allows you to actually do the work. So instead of saying, gee, I would like to help so many people, or you should go out and help so many people, you can actually use that for yourself. And I am now at this stage of my career thinking about how to do that more poignantly and fruitfully. I'm now looking for ways that I can do that to create a level of sustainability within our community.
So that's a beautiful question, and I love parenting. One of the key things in my growth list is be as great a parent as I can be, because I think that's one of the biggest responsibilities that being human, the whole act of being human gives us, right? To raise another like baby you and not that kid up. So
too much,
right? So one of the key things, I remember talking to a parental psychologist called Shelley Lemko, and I asked her once, Shelley, what is the greatest gift a parent can give a child? And Shelley said this. She said, the greatest thing you can do for your children is to be acutely aware that they form their beliefs because of you. So make sure that you are taking absolute care to give them the right beliefs. Now, this is so important. Kids are little meaning-making machines. It's how the human brain has evolved to work. We create meaning about the world. Now, if you think about, say, American parenting, right? Let's say Billy, your kid is sitting at a table and he drops his fork, and you go, Billy, don't drop that fork. And 2 minutes later, Billy drops his spoon, and now you're like, Billy, I told you not to drop that. And now you drop a spoon, go stand in that corner. So you take Billy off the chair, you go put him in the corner. And if you're parents, I've done that. I know you guys have done that as well. Now I thought that was fine. I'm not slapping the kid. Right. I'm just making him stand in the corner so he learns to hold his frickin' cutlery. So Shelley said, the problem with that is this. We're not paying attention to Billy's meaning-making machine. It's that machine in the child's head that's creating meaning. What if this is what is going on in Billy's head? He accidentally dropped his fork, and he was surprised that his mom, questioned him. He's a kid, his hands, he's still learning to use his hands. And so he wanted to find out, was his mom really angry with him? Is mom really angry? What if I drop my spoon? I just want to see what happens. That's how kids understand the world. They experiment. So he drops the spoon. Now mom sends him to a corner. He doesn't get to finish his meal, which he was enjoying. Now think about, Shelley says, what's going on in Billy's head. The meaning-making machine is turning. He's going, Mom doesn't trust me. Mom is angry at me. Mom sends me to a corner because she doesn't respect me. Mom doesn't love me. Does she love me? Why am I in a corner? Why can't I speak now? My voice is not important. And these things become part of our identity. And these things, when they repeat, is what creates adults that can be so broken. All of us grow up with these holes within ourselves. We feel not loved enough. We feel not important enough. We feel that we don't matter. All of us grow up. I had these issues as a teenager. And it's because our style of parenting doesn't take care of the meaning-making machine in a child's brain. So how do you do that? Well, you be acutely aware of how a child's brain works. So with my son, let me give you an example of the opposite, right? I was driving my car with my son 2 weeks ago, and he asked me a question. I can't remember what it was, but it was something about science. He's a science junkie. And as he asked me the question, the phone rang, and I checked it, and it was my CF phone. I knew it was an important call, so I took the call. And 2 minutes into the call, I realized I'd ignored my son. Now, what does that tell him? It occurred to me that his meaning-making machine might go off and go, oh, Dad's work is more important than me. I'm not important. Dad's CFO is more important. So I paused the call and I said, Hayden, I am so sorry. Your question is so important to me. You're the most important person in my life. I just need to finish this call because it's only going to be 2 minutes, and I'm guessing it's something urgent, and then I'm going to give you full attention. Those simple statements tweak his meaning-making machine and gives him a sense of importance, gives him a sense of understanding that he is truly important. So as parents, you want to be careful of that. Now, if you do that, your kid is growing up with healthy beliefs which are empowering, beliefs of confidence, beliefs that say, I matter. And when children have that, they are less immune to the rules of the culturescape. They are less immune to a religious leader who might say, you're a sinner because you ate the wrong type of meat, or because you didn't follow some arbitrary bullshit rule written 2,000 years ago. They are able to use their own, they get a positive meaning-making machine. and they are better able to use that sense of power and confidence to navigate the world without falling for other people's boat.
What is it that gives your life a sense of meaning and purpose? Because once you find that, it puts you in your power place. See, if you know what your life work is, I encourage you to start working on it. If you can't do it all at one time, do just a little bit of it.
You know what I'm talking about? Okay. And so, I just want to, for a moment, I want us to be okay talking about fear. Because when we talk about it, we can disseminate it, we can minimize it into the nothingness that it always was.
At the end of the day, the only thing that you really control is yourself. At the end of the day, the only thing that you can hope for is to be going after something that has meaning, something that has purpose. So what is it that you really want?
I need you to open up your ears. Open up your ears. Because the you from the future is telling you thank you.
That is when you need to develop that unshakable self-confidence, that believe that you can do it. And confidence is not the same as arrogance. You see, arrogance is thinking that you're above everybody else. Confidence is knowing that no one is above you. Do you feel confident enough in your own abilities that you can do what it takes? Are you willing to bet on yourself? Not just words, but action.
Well, I think the one thing that discipline definitely does help you with is it helps you get things done. And when you get things done, when you actually do things, you have more success. If you have more success, sometimes a big part of success is just not being lazy and just doing it. Yeah. That's like 90% of it is just showing up. Get there and start working. Like, you're not going to feel perfect every day. If I only worked out when I felt good, I'd be a fat.
In other words, most people don't give themselves enough credit all the time. They're very aware of these 20% things and not aware of the 80, right? And that's why the dosage is so important too. You've nailed it. It should be 80-20, right? Because people get addicted to this. I'm not good at this. People don't like this about me. I don't feel good. Instead of focusing on the 80 and stacking up, wow, I did eat what I said I was going to today. I did get up when I said I was going to. I made the amount of phone calls. I treated people in such a way I promised myself. It's not just doing those things. It's rewarding it. It's being aware of it and stacking that up.
And this is the most important thing. I want you to be able to create meaningful, purposeful, fulfilling lives for yourselves and learn how to use that to make an impact and a difference in the lives of others. That will be true success.
And we are all too familiar with the waiting that this life in this world deals us. With another round of resumes to send out, or another round of chemo, another negative on another pregnancy test, another underwhelming first date, another specialist, another gray winter day, another shift at the same old job, or another afternoon staring at the four walls of a prison cell just waiting for the night to come. How can this be it? You don't get very far into a life of faith, or just into life itself for that matter, without asking your own version of the question, how can this possibly be it? You know what it's like to ask that question? You asking some version of it now even?
You're praying about your finances, but you see nothing. You're praying for your marriage, your family members, but you see nothing. You got a report from the doctor, but you are praying for healing, but you see nothing. At work, in your company, you're seeing nothing. You got a dream, but nothing. Friends, you may see nothing, but you can bank on the fact and the promise of the resurrection that because Jesus is alive, when you see nothing, it means that Jesus is up to something. He's at work. He's not constrained to time and space. He has no limitations. Right now, He is sorting your life. He's figuring things out. He is always at work. When you don't see, He's moving. When you don't feel, He's fighting. When there is silence, it doesn't mean He's still. You may be down to nothing, And that just means God's up to something.
You got to understand, God wastes nothing. Be careful, because the enemy loves to tempt us, loves to make us think that we have wasted seasons of our lives. But because of God's sovereignty and because of God's providence and because God knows both beginning and God knows end, we can trust that God wastes nothing, because you never know where God wants to take you, because God is using it all.
Over and over again in the Bible, we're told to wait upon the Lord. When you don't understand, don't be unwilling to wait. I was speaking about preachers. Another preacher said to me, who was in a hard spot, he said, I know that God put me here. I just wonder if he remembers where he put me. God knows where you are. The very hairs of your head are numbered. God has his schedule. When you don't understand, don't demand to understand. Don't fail to be faithful. Don't bow to bitterness. Friend, don't be unwilling to wait. God is never late, but he's never ahead of time. It's like the sun coming up. One thing about the sun coming up is you can't hurry it and you can't stop it. And that's the way God is. God is always on time.
No matter what you're going through, he's an on-time God. Number one, I found out he's never early. Flip that coin over, though, I found out he's never late. He's an on-time God.
One of the things you and I must always understand is that while you're in the waiting room, God is in his workroom. And that while you are waiting on God to give you clarity, waiting on God to grant the favor, waiting on God to open the door, waiting on God for the opportunity, waiting on God for closure, you've got to understand that while you're still waiting, God is in his workroom, in his sovereignty of his plan, and he is working in your situation. He is working in that situation. He is in your situation. He is working in that situation. He is working all over the world and in all spaces at the same time. God's waiting room is God's working room. And sometimes we got to remind ourselves that he is working.
Psalm 131 is one of the shortest psalms. It's 3 verses long. You can read it in a second. Charles Spurgeon called it the shortest to read, but the slowest to learn. We bear witness to the light by learning the peace of God and trusting him in the midst of the dark. Jesus' preferred teaching metaphors were agricultural. He's constantly pointing out ways that the Creator has written divine lessons into the very soil that we live on. And it is a miserable farmer who plants a seed and then goes out day after day to anxiously look to see if it's working. Did it take? Has the seed broken soil? Will it really make good on its promise to go from this tiny little thing to growing into something that can nourish and satisfy? No, the farmer has to get used to the rhythm that every harvest requires waiting. But between planting and reaping, there are long stretches of cold, dark days when all the real work is happening in underground, invisible to me. Every time a farmer sows a seed, it's an act of radical trust. And every winter between planting and reaping, that farmer must know peace in the midst of darkness. Waiting is where we discover peace or get eaten alive by anxiety and toil. Peace, that elusive state that we're all after, it's ultimately not found in resolution. Peace is not the end of the wait, because what I'm waiting on is just going to be replaced by another need, and then another, and the next one will feel as urgent as this one does. There's a deeper sort of peace, a variety of peace that cannot be taken by this world because it wasn't given by this world, and its presence. Peace is God's presence in the midst of pain. It is not the absence of pain. It's God's presence here with me in the waiting, not the end of the wait. When you're waiting, you're not doing nothing. You're doing the most important something there is. You're allowing your soul to grow up. If you can't be still and wait, you can't become who God created you to be.
Job says, I look and I go forward, but he, speaking of God, he is not there. And backward, but I cannot perceive him. When he works on the left hand, I cannot behold him. And when he turns and I turn and go right, I can't see him then. Verse 10, but he knows the way that I take. When he has tested me, I shall come forth as gold. Powerful, powerful words. It's obvious that Job is in a time in his life where he's saying, God, where are you? He's saying, God, where are you? You seem unconcerned, absent, and silent when I need you the most. He had lost his family, his children. He had lost his wealth. He had lost his health. He had lost his friends. He had lost everything good in his life. And now in chapter 23, he's lost his God. He's lost his God. I mean, that's when you really hit the place about as low as you can go when you can't find, you feel like you're God abandoned. The absence of God is unexplained. He's not there. God, where are you? He said, I just don't see him. I just keep going through it. But I love what he said at the end of it, the conclusion of it all. His conclusion is, I don't know where I am anymore. I don't know what's going on anymore. He said, I don't know where he is, but he knows where I am. For he knows the path that I take. Did you hear that verse? He knows where I am, even when I don't know where he is and I can't perceive him, and he knows my name. He knows the number of hairs on my head. He knows my fingerprint. He knows everything about the path that I am on. And then he ends with a powerful faith confession. And when he has tried me, I will come forth as gold. Wow. That's powerful. That's powerful. This story teaches us that God is still working when you think your situation is at its last sickening conclusion. God is still working. I'm preaching to somebody today, a lot of somebodies, who the enemy has told you it's way too late for any change good to ever come. You don't understand. Your case is different, but your case is not different. Learn something from this. God is still working.
You will find yourself in those very moments where you're going to have to ask yourself the question, are you going to be petty or are you going to be purposeful? Are you going to be jealous or are you going to be joyful? Are you going to be grateful or are you going to begin to grumble? Are you going to be impatient or are you going to be intentional? Waiting will test your integrity. That's what waiting does. Waiting always reveals your character. It's by the very nature. That's why you find it so consistently throughout the scriptures that God often allows his servants to navigate through waiting seasons, because waiting often reveals character. Friends, it is this ideal of waiting and this willingness to wait that is an essential skill of the Christian life. That no matter where we are in our juncture, in our journey of following Christ, waiting is a prerequisite for how we will grow into maturity. That we will discover that waiting on God is always worth it.
And the reality of this world includes things like delay, pain, loss, disappointment, and unmet expectations. Everything significant that God does in this world and in us, it involves long stretches of waiting.
I mean, how do you spend your waiting time is everything. How you spend your waiting season is everything. Waiting time is not wasting time. Waiting time is worshiping time. And in that worship, you can bring wherever you may be in your waiting season. That perhaps you're waiting on the doctors to tell your loved one they are cancer-free. Or perhaps you're waiting on a relationship to get better. Or perhaps you're waiting on the Lord to send a relationship that you long for. That in our waiting, we must worship. And in our worship, we must trust Him by bringing our disappointment and our faith and our desperation. That God, it has not been easy. God, it has been challenging. God, the uncertainty has been incredibly difficult. But God, I am trusting you for what you're going to do, and I am trusting you for how you are going to work in my life and through my life. That He is a God that's always worth waiting for. That He is a God that has not forgotten about us. That He is a God that has a sovereign plan that He is working. That He is the same God that called you from the very inception. He is worth waiting for.
Some are inspired to take advantage of something that come to town. Other pass stop my step to that. Here's what I call it. My stories of the mind, and I just leave it at that. Something I don't try to figure out. I take the simple approach now. Right? Some people do and some people don't. I mean that about as profound as my physique. Some buy and some don't buy. Some go forward and some don't. Some change and some don't. And if you have been around for a while, you can usually work out the number right. 3 do, 7 thought, whatever business you are involved in. Pretty soon, you got this ration going. The ones that do, the ones that don't. You sing, will I don't, the ones that don't. How come the don't we don't know? I just leave it as my story. I used to try to understand all that.